Hi everyone, Molweni. My name is Oyama Mdleleni, and this is my first YouTube video. I just wanted to share my story. I just felt compelled and a heavy burden to share my story with the hope that it will assist someone out there who can know that they are not alone in this. So I'll just break down my story. I was born in 1983 in Cape Town, in a township called Guguletu. Immediately when I was born, my father died. He was involved in a car accident. It was on the 26th of December. They were on their way to the beach. He was with some of his nephews and nieces. So I later then discovered that his death certificate indicated that he had sustained head injuries. So after then he died. I was left with my mother to raise me. My mother then, she was 23 at the time when she had me. She then left me with my paternal family to raise me. My paternal family at the time consisted of my grandmother, who's my father's mother, and his sisters, my aunts. He had 6 sisters. He was the only son. So then my mother would sometime come and take me to school, because I remember when I was 5 years old, he came and he took me to school, and it was on a drizzling morning. So she had me on her back, and then after that, the next memory I have is when I was then sent to live in the Eastern Cape, the former Ciskei, to live with my aunt, one of my father's sister. She was older than my father. When I got there, she was living with her husband, and at the time they had 3 sons. They later on had a daughter. In total they had 4 children together. So when I got there, I could see that they were well off. Even though they were living in the rural area, they had a big house, they had livestock. The husband, which is my aunt's husband now, he was a taxi owner. So he owned taxis and he was respected in the community. As I lived with them, I then discovered when I arrived there that they were also living with my aunt's husband's nephews, who were twins. I think they were in their early 20s. They were older than me. One of the twins was talkative, he was hyper, and the other one was reserved. He seemed very shy. And as I lived with them, then I started to go to school. I started to make this one friend. We were quite close, and we used to go to school together, and we did quite a lot of things together. Then I used to sleep in an open area. It was the living room, but it was quite spacious. So it was open, and I would sleep there alone, and it was quite frightening at night, because it would get dark and I would be sleeping here alone. So what then started to happen is that the twin, who seemed shy and reserved, he would come over to where I would sleep, and he started raping me from the age of 6. This happened for some time, for a period of almost about 2 years. And I did not tell anyone. I did not report this to anyone. I don't know what was going through my mind as the 6-year-old. I then started this started in 1989. Then in 1989, I started to have, in my genital area, I started to have sores, blisters, and I couldn't walk. Eventually I was sent then to the clinic. As the nurses were conducting their assessment, then they discovered that I had been penetrated on in my vaginal area, in my vagina. I had been penetrated on. They then reported the matter to the police. I can vividly remember going to court. In the court, I was not put on the stand. I did not say anything. But what I remember very well is when my aunt's husband made an exchange. He exchanged money with an official, one of the officials in the court. I remember that like it was yesterday. After this happened, I never went back to court. So I didn't know what was happening. My grandmother then came back with one of my aunts. I left my aunt's house. I then went to stay with my grandmother. They had another house. It was not far from where my aunt was staying. I stayed in that house with my aunt because I remember I sustained this scar from this house now, where I was taking out from the cupboard 2 cups of as I was preparing in the morning to go to school, and I was going to brush my teeth, and the cups, they broke, and one cup cut me on the hand. So I remember this house that they stayed in, because we stayed there for a short period. But what I also remember is that the friend I used to have, the one I was very close with, she suddenly stopped talking to me. She stopped talking to me and going to school with me. So, and I remember sensing also that there was this tension within the community. There was this tension where I felt like people were talking about me behind my back. And this was confirmed to me in 1999 when I went back there. I remember it was one of my cousins was going to the initiation school, and we arrived at my aunt's house. We stayed there, and the community members were still talking about me, as they were saying, this is her, this is her, this is her. This was in 1999. Now I was 16 years old. So that's why I can recall that there was tension in the community after this happened, where I felt like I was being blamed. I felt like they were talking about me, shaming me, the community members now of this area in Ciskei. The area is called Kwaqumashe. That's what the area was called. So after I stayed now in this house, going back now to 1989, 1990, as my grandmother came and my aunt, and we stayed briefly in this house. Then I went back to Cape Town. Now, 1991, I was going to start Standard 1 I was turning 8 years old. So that what happened then was never spoken about again. Nothing happened, nothing was done about that. Then when I moved in again, we stayed, okay, I went back to Guguletu now. My grandmother, she owned this house. It was a house that was given to in the town, that was built in the township. The families would be built a 4-room house by the apartheid government. So it was quite a small house. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a sitting room. And my grandmother occupied one of the bedrooms, and the other bedroom we shared as girls. But at the backyard area, there were a lot of rooms that were built there. Some of them were built with bricks and mortar, and some of them were built with corrugated iron. So some of my aunts then would occupy those rooms, and some of my cousins also, especially the boy cousins. So then now I continued to go to school. Now, as I was staying there here in Guguletu, we were quite a lot in this house. I think three of my aunts used to stay there, and some with their children, and also the children of some of the aunts were not staying there. So it was we were quite a lot of people, but my aunts used to cook, and they worked. Some of them worked in restaurants. They would cook like meals such as lasagna, stir fries. So they enjoyed cooking. And at the time, because my grandmother was still living, they would cook in. There was one central area where meals were prepared for everyone in the house, which we were almost, I think we were over 20 staying there. And now, again, as I was staying there with some of my cousins older, because my father was the fifth child, so he had 4 older sisters, and the sisters had children. Then he had 2 younger sisters. So I had very old cousins. Some of them, they were older than me. And I started to make friends, playing with friends. And one of the cousins, he's the firstborn son, my first aunt. He's my first aunt's son. He would call me to come, and then he would give me a ball. I would take this ball and go play with the other children with it. Then from there, the next thing, when he called me, he would take me to this shack where he was sleeping with my other cousin. He would take me to his shack now, and he started raping me. This is a cousin now. When he started doing this, I went into a shell. I remember I closed in, and I stopped playing. I would go to my neighbor's house, and I would play by myself. I would talk to my invisible friends, and I would just close in, and I didn't want to play anymore. And no one noticed this. And then as I would close in, then I started to have this tendency of just crying out of the blue. I would just cry, and my grandmother and my aunts would just tell me to go outside. Then I would just sit by the door and cry for hours. And they didn't understand why I was behaving like this. I would just cry and cry and cry. So this happened for some time now in 1991. It happened for a period of about, I think about 6 months. Until then, he would look for me during the day and wouldn't find me because I would be playing alone in a hidden corner, hidden area in my neighbor's house. He wouldn't find me. Then he started to sneak inside the main house now to try and find me inside the house. This one night he went inside at night. People were sleeping, and then he took off my panties. As he was taking off my panties, one of my aunts came in. As she came in, she saw what he was trying to do. This matter now was never reported to the police. Instead, he was sent to go and live with his sister in a different area. So it was never reported to the police. I started now to open up again, and I started to go play again outside with friends. This is when now my mother came back to my life. Immediately after this, my mother came back to my life, and she was pregnant at the time with my sister. I was 8 years at the time. She had my sister in 1992. My mother, then I started to visit her. She was living with her new husband, and they were living in a shack in an area where the toilets and the water was communal. They shared the water and the toilets as a community, so they did not have their own sites, their own stand. They were then relocated to a different area where each family had a stand, and they had their own toilet outside with the tap, but then they still built their houses with corrugated iron because they were just given empty stands. So they built a 3-room house, 1 bedroom, a kitchen, and a sitting room. So they started staying there. I would still visit them in that where they were staying now. So she had my sister. Then I started living with them in 1997. I was doing standard 7. I started living with them. I think what made her to take me to live with them is that my aunt now used to come to her all the time to ask for money to buy food, because I was an extra mouth to feed. So then my mother at the time, she had a shebeen. She was selling alcohol, and her husband used to work for Metro Rail, and he was a ticket inspector. Quite a decent job. And so then she took me in to live with them, and at first I enjoyed living with them because I felt like I was part of their family now. During holidays, December holidays, her husband would take us, all 4 of us would go and buy clothes, would use the train and then go and buy clothes for us. This happened for a number of years, and he would give my mother money to buy food, to buy groceries and whatever necessities were needed in the house. So I saw nothing at first. He did not show any dissatisfaction with having me. He did not show any contempt with having me as part of their family. Up until now, I was the year before I went to university. So I started to change a bit. He started to behave like he would say things like, he would call me like umqakwe, which is a derogative word for a child born out of wedlock. Then this made my mother very furious. So this one time, he said, now, he used to take us to go buy clothes. This one time he refused. He said, no, he's not taking us if I'm taking along. And then my mother said, then if I'm not coming, then we all not going. So we didn't go buy clothes that year. And I felt bad that now this was happening because of me. It was my fault now, because he couldn't buy his own child clothes because I was there. So, but then this year now, that I was in year 2000, I was doing my matric. In 1999, I had a boyfriend. I started dating this guy in 1999. I was 16 years old, to whom I supposedly lost my virginity. If you still are a virgin after being raped as a child, I wonder if you can still call yourself a virgin, because that right to choose when to lose your virginity, to whom and how, was taken away from me. I didn't feel like a virgin. I then started now to the guy I was dating was not respectful. I didn't feel worthy of respect. I didn't feel worthy of a partner or a boyfriend who would respect me. But now, okay, in year 2000 now, I was doing my matric and it was going quite well, but I was struggling a bit with maths and accounting. So my school was in Escalation. And when I then, the school was in Escalation, there were winter classes in Kwalanga. So it's quite a distance. I would have to use a bus to go to Kwalanga. When I started, I would go on Saturday in the morning. I remember it was in the month of May, towards the end, around the 25th of May. I was going to attend my winter classes in Kwalanga to try and boost my maths and accounting marks for the final exam. I walked a distance, I think maybe of about, it was not a long distance, maybe I think of about 4 kilometers to the bus station. As I was walking, it was early in the early hours, around 7. It was quiet on the road. I was walking, and I remember, as I was walking, I remember this person was running. I think they were jogging, but this person was running. As they were walking past me from behind, running past me from behind, immediately after this person runs past, I see 3 people who were walking towards me, but they were in a bit of a distance. I couldn't tell exactly if they were young or old. At the time, they seemed like it's people who are coming from work, maybe. And as they came closer, now I could see them closer. I saw that they were young, and it was 3 boys. Then I crossed the road. They crossed also. It was 3 of them. They crossed also. I then up until I met with them. As I was trying to walk past them, one of them put his arm around my neck, my shoulder, in a hug position, and he had a gun, took out a gun, and he turned the position. He turned my position now. I mean, my direction to where they were facing. He turned the direction to where they were facing. And we started walking, and one of them took my backpack as they were going through the stuff in my backpack. And in my pencil case, I had some coins and a 10 rand, which was my bus fare. And they took these coins and took this money, and they were asking me where I was going. I was telling them I'm going to school, and I had a watch, a Kelso watch, and they took my watch. We walked at a distance, not even a kilometer, to an abandoned structure. I remember I was wearing Levi's jeans because it was starting to get chilly, and I was wearing a mohair jersey. It was in mustard in color, and the jeans were navy blue. And I was wearing, there used to be these push-ins shoes that were very warm inside. They were navy and yellowish. So they took me to this structure. When I got into this structure, and the one who had a gun, they told me to take off my pants. I couldn't understand. Okay, take off my pants. I thought maybe they want to take my jeans. My mind was just, I thought maybe they want to take my jeans. I took off the jeans. He said, take off your panty. That's when I knew that I was in trouble. I took off my panties. They told me to lie down. It was just patches of grass and sand. I lie down on the ground, and I realized that one of them was not there anymore. There were two left. The one who had a gun started to rape me. I remember he said to the other one, she's not a virgin, as he was on top of me. When he was done, he told the other one that it was his turn. He also raped me, the second one. When they were done, I got up and put on my panties and my jeans. I wore, and he wanted to shoot me. He said even if it's just on the leg. And I begged him not to shoot me. Eventually then he let me go. I went back home. I was crying all the way. And I had residues now of the grass and the sand on my back. I was crying all the way back home. When I got home, and people were asking me on the road, what happened? Why are you crying? What happened? I didn't have words to speak. I couldn't say anything until I reached home, where my mother was still sleeping with her husband. They were still sleeping. As I opened the door, she jumped out of bed, and because she heard that I was crying, and she asked me what happened. I told her what happened, and immediately she got dressed, and she took me to the police station. When I got into the police station, they took my statement, and they sent me to a doctor. When I got to a doctor, the doctor examined me, and he gave me a pill, which then I later discovered that it was the post-exposure prophylaxis. I took that pill, then I was sent to go for counseling. I went for counseling, I think 1 or 2 sessions of counseling. And then I had my HIV test. I was so afraid to get the results of the HIV. I was so afraid. I remember I did not even go and get them. The way I was so scared of having them, I didn't go and get the results. But this is, I remember the people who raped me, they were never found because the police never made any follow-up. They never made any follow-up. No sketch of the person was, they didn't even say I must maybe try and draw a sketch to try and see if this person, I still remember the features of the person. Nothing. They did not even go to that structure, that abandoned structure, because I'm sure I was not the first one to be raped there, and I certainly was not the last one to be raped there. So that case also, nothing was done about it. And I remember a couple of months later, I saw the guy, the one who had a gun. I was at the bus stop. I was wearing uniform. I was on my way to school. It was in the morning. I was wearing a school uniform. There were also people around me, and I froze. I froze. He didn't look my way. I don't think he would have even recognized me if he saw my face, because I am sure I was not the first one to be raped by him, and I was certainly not the last one. But I then got into the bus and I went to school. So I felt a heavy burden to share my story, and how I'll be sharing other videos in terms of how this has affected me over the years, into my marriage, into raising children, and my finances. It has gravely affected my life, but I wanted to just share my story. The person who raped, the first one who raped me, my aunt's husband's nephew, years later he passed on. He had a heart disease. And I remember my aunt's husband used to call me Nomoko. As a child, as the 6-year-old, he would call me Nomoko, which is a derogative word for a woman who sleeps around, promiscuous woman. So it did left me broken, all these incidents, and left me broken. But at the time, as they were happening, one after another and one after another, building up, I had this resilience. I felt like I always felt like there was an angel over my life, and hence I was able to move. Because even in year 2000, as I was doing my matric, I passed with an exemption in the midst of all what had happened. And when I told my boyfriend at the time, I remember he wanted to sleep with me, and I had told him what had happened, and he wanted to sleep with me. And when I refused, he said, "But you agreed to them, and yet you don't want to sleep with me." So it has affected me gravely in terms of my self-esteem and and receiving the love, and also associating myself, always finding a person who's going to devalue me, who won't find where I did not see my worth, where I did not feel I was worthy, I deserved to be loved, I deserved to be respected. I just always found that I was always in relationships that were not healthy for me, that were not good for me. So I'm sharing this story because I felt a heavy impression in my heart to share, and to also play my part in terms of addressing these issues and our social ills, our social injustices, and sharing our stories and putting them out there, that there might be someone who's going through the same thing right now, and there might be someone who has gone through it and they're still struggling, still trying to find a way to recover, or maybe they are not dealing with these issues the best way they could, they can, they don't know how to. I will also be sharing more videos of the areas that it has affected me in, which is all the areas: relationship, finances, marriage, children. All the areas of my life have been affected by my rape trauma. But at the end of the day, I have found a way to recover from it. I will be sharing that story also, of where I am at the moment, and how I am slowly in progress of how I am recovering, and I'm finding my worth, and I'm finding my value, and finding my voice also. So I just felt I should share, and with the hope that it might help someone. And more videos are to come. So thank you for taking time to listen to this video, and thank you for the support.